Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel and to our latest video. The small town of Ludgershall is around 16 miles north of Salisbury, close to the border with Hampshire and not too far from Andover. The castle we visit today is the majestic sight and well worth a stop off to have a walk around. From above it is reminiscent of old Sarum, with a circular bank around the perimeter. Although a good portion of it has been consumed by a house and a garden, enough of it remains as it has been for hundreds of years. And although in crumbling ruins in an isolated location, it takes little imagination to picture this castle in its heyday. Whilst it was never a high status castle, it was favoured by royalty, and it had its part to play in the war between Stephen and Empress Matilda. So join us whilst we walk the remains. Like many English heritage castles, it is little more than a ruin, but parts of the tower remains and the foundations of the walls and buildings are large enough to clamber over. You can walk around the bank and the moat area to take in the whole site, and look across the fields towards Collingbourne Wood. There has been a settlement here at Ludgershall from Anglo-Saxon times. At least there is evidence of its origins from 1015, and by the time of the Domesday Book in 1086, it was in the hands of Edward of Salisbury. Edward was appointed Sheriff of Wiltshire, to which he set about the beginnings of his building a stone castle on the strategically important trading route between Marlborough and Winchester. This part of England was valuable. Wiltshire was part of Wessex, once the most influential region of England and home to the capital city, Winchester. On Edward's death, the manor here and possible fortifications passed on to the administration of King Henry I, who dated writs from there early in his reign. By 1138 it was passed to Senior Royal Marshal John Fitzgilbert, also known as John the Marshal, who became the custodian on behalf of the king. He set about fortifying the castle, adding the enclosure to the north, which would contain the most important buildings largely constructed from stone. The southern enclosure, or bailey, would have more than likely had timber buildings, including the castle's farm, stables and kitchens. A little later, in 1210, King John would visit, repair and improve the castle, bringing the building up to date with the fashions of the time and making the castle more of a residence to be able to take advantage of the nearby hunting forests. During the anarchy of civil war between King Stephen and Empress Matilda, Ludgershall's custodian John Fitzgilbert switches his allegiance to Matilda. He fights at her side at the root of Winchester, which sees him play a key role protecting her retreat. Matilda was captured at her castle, but amazingly managed to escape by using an impressive disguise. Her escape plan was something that men and women would gasp at. She was so exhausted that she had the idea to sneak out of the castle, disguised as a corpse. She was dressed in grave clothes and tied up with ropes, where she would be carried out as a corpse to the safety of Gloucester, but en route she sought refuge here at Ludgershall, prompting her enemies to spread word that she had travelled in a coffin and that she was now gone. She fled after a period of time to spend the remainder of her life in Normandy. It would then be Henry III who would inherit the castle from his father, the king. He would be regularly seen visiting, living and enjoying Ludgershall. There is evidence that he visited at least 21 times and would make various additions and important improvements to the castle between the years of 1234 and 1251, transforming it into a lavish royal residence. His main features of his building works were a new Great Hall, constructed purely for extravagant feasts and entertaining, and expanding the royal apartments to include both a king and queen's chamber and 2 separate chapels. 2 separate parks were also delegated for royal amusement. The northern one was too small for hunting, but it probably staged other entertainments and tournaments, which could be viewed from the castle buildings and earthworks, whereas the southern one was much larger and kept well stocked with deer for the king's pleasure. Ludgershall then became known as the King's Manor and was given to successive queens and royal dependents, including Queen Philippa, the wife of King Edward III, and her daughter Isabel, the Countess of Bedford. Then the castle was visited less frequently in the 14th and 15th centuries, and by the 1540s it had already been dismantled and much of it levelled over. The most prominent survival is the tower that we are enjoying now. It has been abandoned for over 500 years, and during most of this time the only visible remnant is this great ruined tower, though foundations of the other rooms were uncovered during archaeological excavations in the 1960s. At its peak, the tower was 3 stories high, containing a secure lower chamber for storage and a fine chamber on each of the upper floors. It is situated within the more northerly of the 2 conjoined enclosures, composed of double banks and ditches. As we walk out of the tower, you'll be able to see the foundations of the King's chambers just directly in front of the Great Tower, amongst the other chambers. Henry would build a new great chamber for his son Edward, equipped with 2 fireplaces and 2 privy chambers. From certain angles like this one, you can really see just how thick those walls are. Although now rubbled and ruined, it's an impressive feature here and one that really adds to the charm of the site. From the tower we have a quick look at the surroundings for an overview of this quite atmospheric castle. Before seeing the great grand hall that would have been built in the 12th century, it was a space for dining and entertaining. Inside there would have been wooden pillars holding up the building, with large glass windows for natural lighting, and the decoration or paint inside would be made to resemble a marble effect for maximum opulence. Clearly what stands today are just the foundations and the cores of the tower and the earthworks. Most people will think there's not a lot to see, but there is if you give it a chance. The history from this site is quite interesting, and it's worth knowing that it's free to visit. A great stop off if you're ever in Wiltshire, worth a wander and a walk in the footsteps of marshals and kings. So that's it for this week, and we really hope that you've enjoyed watching our visit to Ludgershall Castle. If you have, please hit that like button, consider hitting that subscribe button, and why not leave us a comment. If you're interested in other ways to support us, then why not have a look at our Patreon or our YouTube channel memberships. So we'll see you on the next one. Till next time.